Welcome back. Today we're answering a question I frequently have for myself. And that's, if I got to do this all again, would I learn from my mistakes? Or would I just find ways to make new ones? Let's find out as we pour our main walls. Right out of the gate, we made a couple of pretty big changes, and I know switching too many variables can be a problem. But here we are. First, you may notice the color of the pump truck is different. As you'll recall if you watched our foundation video, we got a bit overwhelmed with the intern that was running the last pump truck. While it was partly on us failing to communicate some of our needs and lack of experience or slow him down, we had an immediately noticeable difference in behavior of this operator. The first thing he asked me was if I had any questions before getting started. And, well, after the last experience, I shared immediately that we struggled on that last one and gave him that 90-second synopsis. He laughed and called out exactly which company we went with, further informing us that there's a reputation in the industry for certain players. That sort of calmed me down a bit, and I then went on to say my biggest fear was fighting the hose the whole time again. And would you know it, more laughter, and he asked, did they make you use the stiff rubber hose? I knew right then I was in for a better experience. He knew all of the questions we were about to ask, and we ended up using a flexible hose with a lot more control over positioning and flow rate. He also informed me that there was no need for what to say or any hand signals or anything of that nature, because he was going to be following me around on the scaffolding, watching exactly what was happening. And immediately, I sort of regretted not calling these guys the first time around. But we learn and we move on. The next major change you'll see is that I called in pretty much every favor I could to get additional help. One thing that rings true in pretty much every concrete situation I've ever been part of is that you truly cannot have too much help. Every extra person that can trade out a position is less work for everyone involved. Even just having spotters on the ground looking for blowouts or leaning forms or even the funny looking leaks and calling those out is worth having around. So it's fair to think that even the stepchildren's girlfriends can be useful on the construction site. This time around, we had 10 of us, plus the pump operator. And that meant when we inevitably faced a challenge, there was going to be plenty of people to work on fixes, while some of us could keep moving forward in the areas that were still workable. Another change, and kind of the last really big one, was that we changed the ready mix company we used. We have 3 key players in our area, and when we planned out this house pre-COVID, our concrete prices were around $135 a yard for a pea gravel mix. Today's price was almost $230 a yard at first quote. And since we're about to pour almost 60 yards and that adds up really quick, we tried to sweet talk the batch plant into giving us the contractor pricing. I mean, at the end of the day, how often does a homeowner order more than just 1 or 2 yards of concrete? And in the end, we were able to get that down to about $185 a yard, which is still a stiff increase, but way better than the first quote. We did have to promise to be done before noon, or the drivers would just stop bringing us the mud and go home, so the race was kind of on. As luck would have it, the extra help made all the difference in the world. We had 3 somewhat large problem areas that hit us kind of hard. There was one corner transition between the master bedroom and the entryway that for some reason was slow to firm up in that section and started to ooze out every time we kind of came back over that area. We had a lot of cleaning and overflow on the floor, which caused a little bit of anxiety on the amount of concrete we would have, but eventually we were able to get that to kind of firm up and move on. We also had a beam pocket that got pushed out over the garage because I didn't reinforce it enough. It sat between 2 of the braces and didn't really give me much area to mount anything to hold the form in place. But in the end, it sat near the top of a wall and was pretty easy to correct since there wasn't a whole lot of hydrostatic pressure up above that area. The big one, though, was around the master bedroom exterior door. We had a major blowout there. And it came down to a nuance of the ICF block that I was aware of, but didn't really double check for. I wish we at least had a picture of this, but as soon as it happened, it was chaotic enough that everyone on site stepped in to help. The webs on the actual Fox blocks that we're using are spaced every 8 inches. That's pretty normal. Usually that's fine, plenty strong. But when we have 7 inches of space between the last web and the door buck, that becomes a large section that is unreinforced of just polystyrene foam. When the hydrostatic pressure of flowing concrete builds up quick enough, it's very easy to break that lever edge right off unless it's reinforced. Spoiler alert, it wasn't reinforced. So we sat there and watched nearly 3/4 of a yard of concrete spew right out of the wall, and my anxiety went from a 2 to roughly an 11 in about 1/10 of a second. I was worried at first how we were going to fix it. That was pretty quickly calmed down by the pump guy who said, "I've not been on a job in 10 years without some level of blowout in ICF. Don't worry too much." So we all paused, collected our breath, and managed to pop in the pieces that broke out, add some reinforcement, and kind of got things moving again. As we got moving, I then worried about having over a yard of total spillage so far. Would we actually have enough concrete for the rest of the job? And this would become a lingering anxiety that I couldn't really assuage much until a lot later. In the grand scheme, aside from those 3 large annoyances and a number of smaller ones, and despite the scope of the pour being significantly higher, we did find ourselves with a lot more calm this time around. And without a doubt, a substantial factor was proper ICF bracing. I mentioned it in the stacking video, but these braces truly feel like they could push the world around, not just the almost 100 tons of concrete we're placing here. If you do an ICF project for yourself, get proper bracing. This is not really an area to skimp. And when I say calm, we did find enough calm that we had people trading out for who was spotting and who was working. We had people with enough time to capture some extra video angles that I've been working in here. And we had a few that were able to sneak off during some of the later stages to go and start preparing the grill as a reward for a good morning's work. The later stages, which we didn't really capture too much footage of, mostly involved cleaning up the subfloor from those incidental spills, finishing the vibration and consolidation of the last lift, and then troweling the top flat and placing J-bolts for our sill plate. The only thing that remained from there was to do the final alignment on the braces to hold everything in place where it needed to be and go enjoy some food. So, to revisit the opening question, did we learn? I would say yes. We took a lot more care to stick to smaller lifts around 3 foot instead of filling up most of the wall at once. We had plenty of extra help and proper bracing. We did a much longer briefing with the help that we had on what to expect. And Alila and I were able to coach people a lot more, having been through the trenches at least once prior. Later construction stages will be more indicative of success. Will our walls stay straight? Will our top plates be level? Did our window openings settle or shrink? Those are later learnings. But for today, we're happy with the way the house is taking shape. And for anybody following along, I most certainly asked Alila again, does this feel like our house yet? For me, the house really is taking shape the way I was hoping. Some setbacks, some surprises, but mostly it's been really rewarding. And I hope that you're finding some reward in joining us on this journey. If you are, I'd love it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons down below and leave a comment, either encouragement or criticism, but we hope to hear from you. And thanks for watching.